All right, Jason, I think we'll get started here. I'd like to welcome everyone to today's live tutorial on the basics of FLIR Thermal Studio. I'm Matt Schwegler with the Infrared Training Center. Joining me today is Jason Gagnon. We'll get started here in a moment, but first, just a quick couple of housekeeping items. For those of you that are joining us, we first off want to mention, as I said earlier, we are recording today's webcast. It's going to be up on our YouTube channel in a little bit. It's at youtube.com/infrared training. You'll see a number of other webinars that are up there as well that you're welcome to watch for free anytime. We also have past IR Spectrum episodes, other little tutorials as well, all there at youtube.com/infrared training. And besides YouTube, we're very active on social media. Just want to quickly plug that we're also on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and LinkedIn for the latest industry news, special training offers, and a whole lot more. You can catch us on any of these channels. And if you're looking for our current training schedule, we are now obviously back live training in person in classrooms here in the US and Canada. You can head to infraredtraining.com for the complete list of dates there. Again, that's for the US and Canada, in person, on site, and of course, online as well. The whole schedule is there at infraredtraining.com. And for our fellow thermographers who might be based in Europe, the Middle East, or Africa, irtraining.eu is where you can go to find the list of classes that are available in your region. For questions, if you have questions during the webcast, we'll take those at the end, but we'll also take them as we're going through the material as well. You can send those in either via the chat panel that you see there at the bottom of your screen or the Q&A panel. I'll be monitoring both, so get those ready. And as we do that, I'll toss over to Jason, who's going to go over FLIR Thermal Studio. Good morning, Jason. How are you?
Good morning, Matt. Welcome, everyone, to our presentation today on the FLIR Thermal Studio software. This is FLIR's latest software suite for image analysis and report writing, batch processing, live imaging. It's sort of an all-in-one software suite. Today, I would like to focus on basically two main topics. We haven't done one of these presentations in quite a while. In that time, FLIR has introduced a starter version of Thermal Studio. So we actually have 3 different versions now. So I'd like to take a little time just covering the differences between them, just the key differences and some of the limitations with starter versus standard and pro. The next topic I'd like to touch on is how to create a template. When I was doing support, I would get a lot of questions about templates, how to edit templates, create templates, and so on. And this sort of applied to all the different software programs we've had. So I figured it'd be good for us to start there. We'll create a brand new template, add some pages with some tables and fields, talk about the differences a little bit between those two things. We'll add an IR image and a photo to the page, use some predefined measurements. This is another thing we would get questions on a lot. Is there a way to kind of preset the measurement tools in the template? And there is a way to do that. And whether this is beneficial really depends on how you use the cameras. So we'll go through that. Text annotations is also a nice feature. The text annotation template gives you the ability to predefine labels and values. So it's sort of like a list, a menu list of items that you can pick from. And these templates can be used in the cameras and in the software. So you can create the file and send it to the camera and have the same file available to you in the software. So we'll run through that real quick, how to create those templates and how to use them in the software. We'll save the template and then we'll create a new report. So we can just take it from start to finish. And once the report's made, we can explore some of the image analysis capabilities. So from within the report, you can edit thermal images, and it opens up the same image editor that you would see in the library. So it really depends on whether you want to analyze it after the report's been made or before. But in the report, you always have the ability to edit that thermal image. And you can add spots and areas and change your color palette and your scale. You can adjust your parameters, and you can save those changes right within the report. And any changes will be reflected in the tables if there's anything linked to the image. So that's the plan for today. Now, let me bring up the feature matrix here. So there is a version of this on the website if you'd like to take a closer look at it yourself. If you go to FLIR.com and go to the product page for Thermal Studio, and you scroll down to the bottom of the page, you'll see a link for this product matrix. It's a PDF version, and it's basically the same thing. It just breaks it down into different topics for each version, so you can get a closer look at it. Well, today I'm just going to touch on a few things. I'm not going to go through every single row, but I thought it would be a good idea, particularly with the new starter version, to touch on this a little bit. Matt mentioned in the introduction that FLIR Tools is going away. So FLIR Tools for PC is going to be discontinued. The replacement for that is the starter version. So this is a free version. However, because of how the licensing works, you do need a license for it. So right now, the easiest way to get a license is to request one from our support center. So if you go to support.flir.com, which is just our homepage for all of our support resources and downloads and things. There we go. So if you sign in here, you can ask a question. And you can ask a question on any technical issues. If you run into any problems with the software, this is the place to go. If you're looking for manuals or data sheets or anything like that. But with respect to the license, if you just ask a question here, ask them for a license for starter, and they should be able to help you out. So longer term, we hope to have a portal at the website built at some point, so you can acquire a license yourself without having to go through this. But for now, this is the best way to go. Just go to support, ask a question, and they should be able to get you a license for it. Now, as I said, we do have 3 different versions now. So the starter version, as far as the analysis capabilities, is somewhat limited. You can view and edit radiometric images. You can add spots and areas and lines. So the box, the ellipse, the circle, and the line. But there's no deltas, there's no measurement alarms, there's no polygon. So it's somewhat limited in that area. The standard version adds some functionality there. It gives you the delta, the alarms, the polygon, and the magic wand. And then the pro version gives you everything, including panorama. Now, for video streaming, again, starter's pretty limited here. You can view and record non-radiometric videos, and you can also view radiometric videos. So if you have a CSQ file from a camera, you can view that in starter, but you can't edit it in any way. The editing capabilities come with standard, starting with standard. Standard can edit radiometric videos. So for example, if you have a camera that can record CSQ files, which is a radiometric sequence, you can bring that into standard and edit that, adjust your scale and so on, and then save those changes, right? To take that a step further, the pro version gives you the ability to record directly to the PC over USB. You can also segment videos, which basically means that you can take a smaller piece out of a video and save it as a new video. So if you have a really long video recording and you only care about a small portion of it, then that's where the segmentation comes in, because you can grab just that small piece that you need and then delete the larger video. Now, going down to reporting, with starter, you have the ability to create a report with a predefined template, and that's it, which is very similar to FLIR tools in a lot of ways. Tools would give you some preset templates to work with, but you couldn't really edit them at all. And that's very similar in Starter. You have a template to work with, and that's about it. There's no custom templates, no template editing, really no editing in the report. So that is somewhat limited. Standard, again, adds to that a little bit. It gives you the ability to have up to 5 custom templates. And you can do editing in the report itself. And then Pro, pretty much you can have as many templates as you need. So that opens up a lot of possibilities. Presentation features. This is just a lot of display options as far as switching from MSX to thermal only, the MSX alignment. So Starter actually does allow you to change those modes, the fusion modes. You can adjust your alignment in Starter, which is a good thing. And it gives you some of the color distribution options. So between histogram and signal and some of those things, kind of affects the scale and how the image looks. There's no overlay. We'll touch on the overlay in a second, but there's no editing of the image overlay in Starter. No custom palettes, no HSM. HSM is really it's a high sensitivity mode. It's used mostly for OGI cameras. The standard version gives you the ability to edit the overlay, and of course, Pro gives you everything. There is no batch processing at all in Starter. Standard has it in a limited way, and then Pro gives you all of those batch editing functions, which is pretty. I mean, there's a lot of functions there, a lot of options. You can combine them. It's if you're doing a lot of batch, if you have a need to do some batch processing on a lot of images, then this can save you a lot of time. Things like kind of leveling out the scale, applying the same color palette to a bunch of images. That's really where batch processing comes in. And the add-ins, add-ins require Pro. There's no way to use any kind of add-ins like the route creator with any of the lower versions. Okay. All right, so that kind of gives you a quick overview of the differences. Again, if you want to take a closer look at this, go to FLIR.com, go to the Thermal Studio product page, and then just scroll all the way down to the bottom, and you'll see this as a PDF file. Okay, now, Thermal Studio.
Jason, as we transition in, I got a question here from Igor, which we'll get to in a little bit. If you do have those questions, please feel free to send those in via the Q&A chat panel there, or you can use the chat as well. It does not matter. I'll be looking at both. Igor, I'll get to this here just in a little bit. It's regarding the various measurement tools and I think the summary table and all that. So I'll hold on to that for right now. But if you have others that are very timely in terms of where we are in Jason's presentation, I'll try to get those as soon as possible and have Jason answer those live.
Yep.
Great.
All right. Now, if you're new to Thermal Studio, oops, sorry. The software is divided up into several tabs that kind of group the main functions. Okay. So you have the library and the reporting tab. You have batch processing, panorama, live, and routing. So all your different tabs here just sort of link to different functions of the software. The Home tab has some shortcuts to some commonly used functions. There's also a Settings button on the Home tab. And this is important to explore before you start making templates and things, because you want to go in and make sure that your regional settings are your preferred settings for your reports and your templates. So you can choose your preferred language, your units for temperature and distance. And so that's all right there under settings and regional settings. Also under reporting, there's a couple of things you might want to check. Auto associate photos. This should be checked by default, I believe. This is primarily for the older cameras where you had a thermal image and an associated photo that was separate. This check mark will look for that associated image. With the modern cameras, they have the fusion mode, so they actually store the photo with the thermal image. So it's one file, so you don't have to worry about a different reference file. But if you're using, like a E60 or some of those older model cameras, that will find the matching photo for the thermal. Another thing too is the prompt for document properties. We're going to touch on document properties a little bit once we get into the template. This check mark, if you use that, this will ensure that you are prompted to enter the information when the report's made.
Jason, the question just came in regarding compatibility with Mac. What's the
PC only?
PC only. Okay.
Yep.
All right. That was from Mary. Thanks for the question, Mary.
Yep. So those two check marks you might want to check out. Again, that's under reporting. Also, the default page size too for the reports. If you're starting to create templates and things, you might want to set that beforehand. And there's some font settings as well. The overlay. This was on the matrix. This is unique to Thermal Studio. We've never had this level of control over the overlay. These tabs here allow you to specify what you want to show on that image overlay. So for instance, if you were to open one of these JPEGs in just a picture viewer, this is what you would see. So if you want to, get rid of the logo, for instance, you can just uncheck that. You can choose to show the scale or hide the scale. So you really have a lot of flexibility over how that overlay looks on your JPEG file. And this applies to the File Explorer view. You can apply a batch function to the overlay, right? That's what this tab is for. So if you want to batch process images and remove the scale from all your images, that you would want to set that here, because when you create the batch, these are the settings it's going to use. So that's the main difference between those two tabs. Right. So again, to get there, it's under settings on home. Another thing on the home page is the license button. So this will show you your license information. And if you're planning to put this on a different PC, you'd want to go here and deactivate it on the old PC. Then you shouldn't have any trouble activating on the new PC. So remember, if you have the opportunity, if you know you're going to get rid of the PC, just deactivate it ahead of time, and it will save you the trouble of having to contact support and try to get that sorted out. All right. Now, I'm going to go to the reporting tab because I want to start with creating a new template. And so this is where you would begin. You can see some of the default templates here. So you don't need to create a template to start out with the software. You can just start right away with one of the default templates if you like. Now, there's actually two approaches here. I'm going to create a new template today. But if you like one of these templates, you just want to make a small change to it, you can always right-click and edit a template. If you double-click on it, it's going to start making a report. But if you right-click and edit, it will actually open the template. And so if you wanted to change something about the template, this is where you would do it, and just save it. You can save over the existing, save it as a new file. But just remember to right click on it and go to edit. For today, I want to create a new template. So that's under this button here. So go to new, go to create a new reporting template. So this is where we start with a blank page, right? So I would like to actually use 3 different pages in this template. I want to have a cover page, an IR page, and a page for summary table. So I'm just going to add all 3 of those pages right now. And that on this panel on the left towards the bottom, this is where you can add or delete a page. So I'm just going to hit plus, and now we have 3 blank pages. So we'll start with the cover page. The header space and the footer space can be used very much like a Word document. Anything you'd like to have on all the pages, like a logo or a title or something like that, you can put that in the header. And that way all the pages will look exactly the same. So to edit the header space, just double click. And just double click in the header. And now that opens it up so you can put objects inside this header. Now, a common thing is to have a logo on the report pages or the templates. So you can insert a logo under Insert Image, right? And then go over to Shared Image. So it's called a shared image because basically the way this works is that you set the logo to a certain picture, and then every time you insert that, it uses that picture. So the shared image is exactly the same thing. It just allows you to use a second picture. So we have to insert the logo first. Now, right now, it's not set to anything. So I have to come over here on the right. So this panel on the right, depending on what you have selected, will change, right? So right now I have the logo highlighted, so that's what it's showing me, all the properties of that logo tool. So I want to click here and go to Browse. And then I have to go and find my logos right here. And I can put the ITC on there. There you go. Size it the way you want. Now, because it's set, I can go back, insert logo, and see how it uses the same picture. So it's just a handy way. There. It's a handy way to reuse a picture without having to insert it every time. You can also use text boxes in these headers. You can use a lot of different tools. So if you wanted to put a title in there, up here, these are all across this tab here. These are all the different things you can insert onto the page. So in this case, I want to insert a text box. Put it over. Sorry. It's putting it. Just putting it. I'm not sure. There we go. Okay. So the text box allows you to type, again, very similar to how, Word works or PowerPoint. You can draw a You can create a text box and just type whatever you like into it. You can resize it. And over here, because we have the text box selected, this shows all the properties of that text box. So you can increase the font. You can adjust the alignment if you want to center it, change the color, change the font type. So all of that is controllable over here. Right. When you're done editing the header, just double click on the page and it brings you back to the main page space. Now the same thing applies to the footer. Double click down here. We see in a lot of these reports the page number. It's a nice thing to put into the footer. So we have a special tool that you can insert to show that page number. It's right up here. So you have page number and then you have total pages. So you have them both available to you. So if I do page number, puts it over here, I can move it and size it and so on. Pretty much all the same functionality you have over here for the page number that we have for the text box. All right. So there's the header and the footer. Now, I mentioned document properties a little bit earlier. This allows you to prompt the user to enter some information about the report each time it's created. So if that's something you want to explore, it's under Tools and Document Properties. So things like company name, thermographer name, if you're doing consulting work, maybe customer name, that type of thing. It's not image specific information. It's just more general information about the report itself. So I'll just add a couple real quick here. Thermographer and save that. And now to show this, we have to use a table. So there are a couple different types of tables that you can insert onto these pages. The easiest type of table to use is the predefined table. This is divided up into groups. So you have file information, parameters specific to the thermal images. Most of these are actually specific to the image that would be on the page. But there is a document properties table that you can put on the cover page. And it just takes everything that was in, that list that we saw a minute ago and puts it into this table. Okay. Now, you don't need to show everything. It just starts there and shows you everything. But like this row here, if you wanted to get rid of it, you can right click and remove row. And so you can do that with any row. Anytime you right click, and this actually applies to all the tables, you'll see a lot of the same functions on the right click menu. You can add a row, you can arrange them, move them up, move them down. You can remove a row or you can remove the whole table. So all of that can be found on the right click menu for any of these tables. And again, we'll see when we make the report, but it will prompt for this information when we make the report. Right. This is a good tool if you're creating templates for others to use and you want to kind of make sure all the reports have the same type of data in them. Right. So there's our relatively basic cover page, but it's common to have one or more kind of front pages before the images in a report. So it just depends. You have a lot of versatility here as far as how you want to design these. The second page in our example is going to be the thermal image and the photo. To insert, again, it's under Insert Image, to insert any of any of the image tools. It's all under this button. So we have the thermal image and the photo. We talked about the shared image already. So this is going to define where the thermal image goes when you create those reports. And it's very common to have a matching photo. So we'll put that on the same page here. Right. Now, I mentioned predefined measurements in the intro. Whether this is beneficial, I guess, depends on how you use your cameras. If you do a lot of precise measurements in the field, if you have, if you're positioning the spots and, doing a lot of that work in the field for each image, then you probably don't want to use this, because in that case, you would want the software to just take all of that information that you already did, in the camera and show it in the report. So if you have an image that's saved with 2 spots and delta, you'd want to have that in your report. But there may be a situation where you would want to predefine the measurements, so they're in the report already, or they're populated, I guess. Maybe that's the best way to say it. So it's essentially like a measurements table template. So you can build it into the template. So every single page in the report has, say, 2 spots. So all you would have to do when you get to the report is just position them where they're supposed to be. So if you want to do that, there's a checkbox here to use measurements from template. So that is going to ignore the measurements from the camera image and use whatever you set in the template. So the next step is to set the measurements, because right now it's blank. So if I were to save this and make a report, every single page is going to be blank. It's not going to have any measurements on it. But we can double click on this to edit this kind of template image here. And so this is how you can add your tools. So whatever types of tools you want to predefine, say probably the most common tools, say like if you always have 2 spots and a delta, just set that up in your template ahead of time. So when you create the report, you just have to move them to the proper place. When you're using the delta, make sure you configure it over here. So I just have to make sure that I'm using spot 1 and spot 2 in this case.
Jason, I just had several questions come in from Igor, kind of relating to the tables and the measurements, and I'm wondering probably the best time to ask these, probably right now, but Igor was wondering about, can you add an extra column table? And then another question relating to how do you remove double page numbers from a summary table if you're using 2 IR images in a single page?
I don't think you'd be able to on the summary table. I might have to check on that.
And so then the first one, then, can you add an extra column to an empty table? Can you just pop a column on, or
to a page, like a table on the page?
I think it was specific to like just having a table. And can you add, is it easy to add an extra column into that table?
It doesn't really give you the ability to add a column. This table might. I don't know. Yeah, I don't think you can add columns to these tables. So what we have here, we have 2 spots predefined with a delta T. So now the next step here is to set up a table to display the measurements. So again, we go back to Insert Table. Under Predefined, we can go to Measurements. So again, this groups a lot of common parameters into different tables. So in this case, I want to use a measurements table. And I'm not sure why I put it there. Oops. Sorry. Try that again. There we go. So, because I only have those two spots in the delta, that's all we see in the measurements table. But when the report's created, if I add spots or add areas, you'll see this table add rows automatically. So it reacts to whatever you're doing on the thermal image with respect to adding and changing and removing measurements. If you look on the panel on the right, when we have that highlighted, you can choose, the default is to show everything. So no matter what you add to the image, it's going to show up in that table. But you can control that. If you never want to show, say, polygons or rectangles in the table, you can just uncheck those items here. And it will just permanently basically remove them from the table. Okay. And again, similar to the table we used on the cover page, you can right-click to remove rows, to rearrange the rows. And if you go to add row, you can add information from other categories. So it's not like you're limited strictly to just measurements in a particular table. You can start with that, and then if you want to add other items to it, you can. So I could add the file name or any of the parameters. Say if I want to add emissivity to this table, there's no reason why you couldn't do that. It's just a matter of going to add row and just deciding what you want to put in that table. But these predefined tables are easier to work with and to create a table from scratch. It's a lot more work to kind of link that up to the proper things. So again, right click, add row, you can move the information up and down, etc. So, all right. So we can have a measurements table. We can have, say, another one, maybe camera information. Put that over here. So you can use multiple tables on the page, different combinations of information. So again, there's a lot of flexibility with this and how you show information. Now, you can use what's called a field instead of a table. So if you just wanted to have one individual value, then that, if we go over here, in this category here is for the fields. It's called insert thermal field. So again, it's broken up into different groups for parameters, camera, text, measurement, and so on. So you could pick any one of these, say maybe camera model, and just put that on here as a single individual item. I'll just leave it there so you can see how it works. But it's essentially a single cell table. So if you don't want to have information all grouped together in a table like this, you could use the fields and just put them in different places throughout the page. It's just a different way to show information. The text annotations is another way to show information about the image. If you've used FLIR tools before, this concept has been around for quite a while, even in the cameras. The idea behind text annotations is to give the ability to have a list of items to choose from, either in the camera or in the report once the report's been created. When you're editing the image, you can add labels over here manually. But if you have a list of items that you commonly would type into these reports, then you might want to explore the text annotation templates. It's under Tools here. Now, I have several in here that I've kind of collected over the years. But if you've never used this before, this list is going to be blank. And you can create a new template, or if you have a text comment file, again, this goes back, these have been used for quite some time. So if you have an older text comment file that you used with some other software, you can import that into here and it will add all those labels and values for you. But to create one, you would just go to Create Template. Give it a name just to show you how this works. It's divided up into fields and values. So the field would be like your category. Say location, right? The values would be all those items that are associated with that label. Now, just to give you an example, this is what a text annotation, a completed file would look like. So you have your location, values, equipment, problem, recommendation. Now, the advantage of this is, let me close that. When you're editing the thermal image, you can create labels manually, or you can import them from one of those templates. So I can go to that same template, see all these values here, and then just pick whatever one applies to that image. And so this is the template image, so it's not going to save these, but that's basically what it will look like. And let me just save that. You can display these in the tables. So it's not going to save them in the template image, but I added them anyway, just so I can show you in the template what this would look like on the page when you insert a text annotations table. It's going to read the image and show you whatever text is included in that image. So again, in the template, this is just kind of a placeholder. So you can add them to the template image just to see what the table will look like and if everything will fit. But when you create the report, you have to add them or select them for each image individually. These templates can also be used in the camera. So if you export it as a TCF file, then you can use them. Many of the cameras support this. It really depends on the camera model. You have to check that first, but many of these can be used in the cameras. So that gives you a way to use the same list in both areas, both the camera and the software. So now we have our cover page with some document properties. We have a thermal image on a photo. Thermal image has predefined measurements. We're showing a measurements table, camera information table. We did add emissivity to this table here. And we're showing a text annotations table. Now on the last page, I want to add a summary table. So the summary table, it does what you might imagine. It creates a summary of your report. So all the images that are in that particular report, it puts into that table automatically. So if you have 10 images or 20 images, the table will have 20 rows for however many images you have. In the template, it's always just going to be a single row, right? Depends on how many images you have on the page, really. But in this case, we have only one thermal, so we have one row. The columns can be defined depending on what you want to summarize on. So I can right-click and remove the columns I'm not interested in, and add any columns that I want to report on in these summary tables. So something you might want to report on is a text annotation. In this case, you have to know exactly what the label is that you want to show. So I'm going to show equipment item. And because it's in this template image, it shows it here. So that's another good way or good reason to add these into the template, even though it won't keep them like in that template image. It allows you to make sure that the table's linked up the way it should be. And so anytime you want to add something here, you can just right click, add column. Maybe you want to show delta value. So that links up to the name of the measurement tool. So again, you got to reference that from up here. It's called DT1. So it shows that. All right. So now we have all 3 pages made. I want to save this as a template. Just call it something quick. There we go. Now that it's saved, we can close that. We can go back here. There's my new template. If I select this template, it's going to go to the next step where I can select. There we go. I wanted to find the right folder there. Select my images. I can select all, drag them over here. And it takes a minute to do this. I want to show you another way too. There's a way to create a like a quick report using the desktop shortcut. The end result is the same. Here's the document properties window I mentioned earlier. So if I put my name in there, ITC, save that, puts that right on the cover page. So there's my document properties. Here are my image pages with the predefined measurements. Tables are all set up. This one actually has some text annotations in it. This one does not, so it's blank. So in this case, if I wanted to add anything, I'd have to go to the image, open up the template that I want to use, pick the items that I want to show, and then save that image. You can add them manually too, but you have to make sure that it's the same exact. If you're showing it in a summary table, you have to match the case and everything. It has to be exactly the same. If you add them manually, this just makes it easier because you're just picking from a preset list. We go down to the summary table. There you go. See, a lot of these don't have any equipment information. But you can see all the pages, temperature data. So, let me show you another quick way to make a report. If you right-click on any of these templates, you can create what's called a rapid report shortcut. Puts that right on the desktop. Which I have right here. So now I have a shortcut to that same folder right here. So I can just drag that on top of there. And it will create my report without having to even open the software. It actually opened a second window. It's a quick way to create a report. Once you have your template all set up, if you don't want to start the software ahead of time, you just bring your images back, import them from the camera, drag and drop them onto the shortcut, and there you go. Your report's made. And so now, once you have the report made, anytime you want to edit anything about the thermal image, you can double click on it. So I did this quickly a minute ago just to show you the text annotations. But if you double click on the thermal image, it opens up this full image editor. This is where you can adjust your scale and your color palettes. You can add temperature measurement tools. All of the different functions are right up here. So all the measurement options, now I'm using Pro, so with the lower versions, you'll have different limitations here, but you can add spot meters, rectangles, ellipses, anything really, any of those tools. And when you save the image, you'll see it obviously on the page, but you also see it here in this table. I think there's a field there that's not linked to anything. There. All right. So whether you do the editing beforehand it's up to you. You can go to the library. Here, let me just take a step back. We can go to the image library first and double click, and you pretty much get the same window. So you could do this ahead of time before you make the report, or you could just drag and drop them right in and then do the image analysis from within the report. Really, the only difference is that when you save it in the report, it saves it only in the report. It doesn't update the image on the, in your file library, File Explorer. All right, Matt, how are we doing on time?
I think we're ready to wrap it up.
Okay.
Coming up on 5 of.
Okay.
Yeah. A nice solid overview there.
Good.
Anybody have any questions for Jason? Any questions for Jason while we're waiting here at the end? I know we had that from Igor was asking about earlier, the the double page numbers and all of that. Igor also mentioned too, he adds a box polygon or spot to an infrared image in the library. And when you try to edit those boxes, the program seems to add an extra annotation table. I don't know if you know anything about that, or if that's just something how it is, or.
See why it would do that.
Yeah.
I haven't seen that happen. I mean, we could try it real quick. Let's see. So edit from the library first. Said it was a box or a polygon?
Yeah, it was that any shapes, it sounded like.
Okay. Now, why don't we do one of each? See what happens. Let's see. Oh, my template's set up for predefined.
Oh, okay.
Let me pick a different template. Yeah, but there. I think this one. No, let me check first.
Well, Jason's troubleshooting that. If you want to ask any more questions, feel free to send those in either via the chat or the Q&A panel.
Yeah.
Remember, we are recording today's session, so if you want to share this with a friend or a colleague, we'll have it up on our YouTube page here by Monday at the latest. That's the plan, at least. And then we will be doing more here. I think the week of May 10th, the plan is to talk more about the Route Creator plugin for the Pro version. I'm sure we could touch on some of the template related items as well. That's likely going to be later in the week of May 10th, maybe Friday, May 14th, somewhere in there.
The routing.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're looking for sometime mid-May. I think we'll touch on that. That's an add-in for Thermal Studio for creating asset lists, and you can send them to the camera and collect a lot of the information, import it back, and create reports from it. So I think it's we would like to dedicate one session to that, because there's the software is very there's a lot of features in this, so I think it'd be worthwhile to have a session specific to that. With regards to the polygon areas or the box and polygon, I'm not seeing anything unusual with this. It adds the polygon in the box.
Okay.
I don't see any extra tables, so it may be something unique to that template. You might want to delete the tables and recreate them. See if you can sort that out, or maybe create a new template and see if it behaves the same way.
We should probably just, for Igor and Jason, anyone else, mention if they're having any issues for troubleshooting, best way to go now, right? Support, go to FLIR support for that directly.
Mm-hmm. Support.FLIR.com. Any kind of technical issues you're having, that's the best place to go. They have pretty extensive knowledge base too. You can search for answers and things, but you can also ask a question if it's something if you can't find an answer to it, and they can help you out with troubleshooting problems and things like that.
Yeah, I just chatted that over in the chat window there. So yeah, support.FLIR.com. You can submit a question, open a ticket, anything like that were to pop up. Let's see, Nalter was asking about some of the things with formulas. If you could show how to use an example, well, one example of using a formula. I guess maybe just, I know it's new to you, Jason. I don't want to put you on the spot, but formulas, what would they be used for? Like, what could we use a formula for?
Pretty much anything. I mean, it's pretty open-ended as far as how you want to do these. There's a few examples here. I don't know. The software comes with a couple of stored formulas that you can work with. For example, this one has difference in average temperatures and some different things. I mean, this is quite involved, and it's very, there's a lot you can do here, and it helps if you have some programming experience. It helps with creating these. It's very much like a script type language. We have a manual dedicated to formulas at the support site. So if you're interested in exploring this more, you might want to check that out, because that gives a lot more information than just the standard manual. It actually lists all the different image properties and measurement properties and things that you can access. So you can automate some things and do some pretty complicated things, to be honest with you, with these. But if you want to explore that a little more, it's under the tools and formula editor, and definitely check out that manual. That'll help you out, I think, a little bit.
All right.
Okay.
I think we're good on questions. I don't see any others that are coming in right now.
All right.
Let me just, we'll quickly wrap up here. We're coming up on 12 o'clock. Really appreciate everyone participating here today. This was good. Our first one back here in a while. Good to have the webinars back. But yeah, Thermal Studio has been asked about a lot. It's something we are going to be teaching in our classes now going forward here April 1st. Not teaching the software per se, but if you are coming to a live certification class, well, whether it's in person or online or on site, the software that we're using now is FLIR Thermal Studio. So just if you're thinking about training with us, if you're coming to class, that's the software that you want to have. And going forward, we'll be using this for all of our demos and whatnot. As I mentioned, we recorded the session here today. It'll be up on our YouTube channel here a little bit later at youtube.com/infrared training. And then obviously we are active on social media. Look for an announcement coming up for mid-May. Again, the week of May 10th, I think, is what we've tentatively penciled in for us to do this route creator webinar. It's going to get all into the ins and outs of the Route Creator Studio, their software with Thermal Studio. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, or LinkedIn for the very latest. As I mentioned also, for our latest training schedule, you can go to infraredtraining.com for classes here in the US and Canada. And for our fellow thermographers based in Europe, the Middle East, or Africa, irtraining.eu is where you'll find a list of courses in those regions. All right, Jason, really appreciate your time today. Thanks for being on.
Not a problem. My pleasure.
All right, folks, thank you for joining us, and hope you enjoyed today's webinar. And we'll see you online again soon at another future live event here from the Infrared Training Center. Have a great weekend.